Today, we're diving into what is literally one of the most unprecedented political trajectories in American history. We are tracing the life, the career, and the dual presidencies of Donald J. Trump. Whether you're a massive political history buff or you're just trying to map out the timeline of modern events, we're going to break it all down for you. We'll cover the facts, the policies, and the truly pivotal moments of his time in the public eye.
Let's kick things off with a quick piece of trivia. It really shows just how rare this path actually is. Who is the second president to serve non-consecutive terms? Think about that for a second. Throughout all of American history, spanning centuries and dozens of leaders, returning to the White House after losing a re-election campaign had only been done exactly once before. So to understand how Donald Trump became the second, we really need to look at where his whole story begins.
Donald John Trump was born in Queens, New York, back in 1946. After he attended the New York Military Academy and the Wharton School of Finance, he stepped up and took over his father's real estate company in 1971. He rebranded it as the Trump Organization, and from there, he expanded vastly. We're talking hotels, casinos, golf courses, the whole shebang. But he wasn't just building properties, he was building a massive personal brand. This all kind of culminated with his 1987 bestseller, The Art of the Deal, and then a wildly successful pivot right into millions of living rooms with his 2004 reality TV show, The Apprentice.
Amidst all that television success, 2005 brought a major personal milestone when he married Melania Knauss. Together, they have one son, Barron. Trump also has 4 adult children from previous marriages, and that's Donald Jr., Ivanka, Eric, and Tiffany. Now, this family dynamic wouldn't just stay private. As you'll see, they would become highly visible fixtures when he made his historic pivot away from entertainment and directly into the political arena.
Fast forward to 2016, and 4 words completely altered the American political landscape. Make America Great Again. This wasn't just a campaign slogan. It became this defining, highly energized political movement. Defying pretty much all traditional expectations, Trump secured the Republican nomination, took his populist message directly to the voters, and ultimately defeated former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton.
Once he got into office, he completely rewrote the presidential playbook for communication. Instead of relying purely on those traditional press briefings or media filters, he basically bypassed those channels entirely. He utilized social media, most notably Twitter, of course, to broadcast his policy positions and unfiltered opinions directly to the American public and even to world leaders in real time. We simply had never seen a presidency operate quite like this before.
So, what did he actually do during that first term? His administration pushed through major shifts both at home and abroad. Domestically, he signed a massive tax reform bill, slashed federal regulations, and put in place protectionist trade policies, like tariffs on steel, all while renegotiating major trade agreements. Then, over on the global stage, he made some highly consequential moves. He relocated the U.S. Embassy in Israel to Jerusalem, brokered historic normalization agreements in the Middle East, and actually made history in 2018 as the first sitting U.S. president to ever meet with a North Korean leader.
But perhaps one of his most enduring domestic legacies is captured by just a single number: 200. The Trump administration aggressively transformed the federal judiciary, pushing through more than 200 judicial appointments. And absolutely crucial for the long term, he successfully nominated and confirmed 3 conservative justices to the United States Supreme Court. That first term, however, was also marked by deep, historic political division. In 2019, the House of Representatives voted to impeach President Trump on charges of abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. Following the constitutional process, the trial then moved over to the Senate, where he was ultimately acquitted of both charges and remained in office.
Then, the final year of his presidency was entirely reshaped by an unprecedented global crisis. On January 20, 2020, the first confirmed case of COVID-19 was reported right here in the U.S., and the pandemic pretty much consumed the remainder of his term. Historically speaking, it remains a heavily debated era. Critics of the administration argued that Trump's response was delayed and that he didn't sufficiently encourage established public health practices.
But on the other side of that historical record was Operation Warp Speed. In response to the crisis, the Trump administration launched this massive initiative to heavily fund and assist the private sector in rapidly developing countermeasures. And the program successfully aided in the development of 2 approved COVID-19 vaccines in absolute record time. It was an achievement that significantly altered the global trajectory of the pandemic.
Right in the middle of this ongoing pandemic, the 2020 election took place. Trump ultimately lost his re-election bid to former Vice President Joe Biden. However, Trump did not accept the results. He
He cited claims that widespread voter fraud had affected the outcome, and those highly contested claims really set the stage for an incredibly tense transition period. Which brings us to the really volatile events of early 2021. Motivated by those claims of election fraud, his supporters gathered in Washington, D.C. for a Save America rally on January 6th. Well, that rally turned violent when the president's supporters overwhelmed law enforcement. They successfully breached the United States Capitol building and forced a massive disruption of the ongoing Electoral College vote count that was taking place inside.
The fallout from that day was incredibly severe. To put it directly, according to a bipartisan Senate report analyzing the aftermath of the Capitol breach, 7 individuals, including 3 law enforcement officers, ultimately lost their lives. And in addition to that tragic human toll, the Capitol complex suffered millions of dollars in physical damage. Exactly 1 week later, on January 13th, the House of Representatives took unprecedented action again. They approved a single article of impeachment against President Trump for incitement of insurrection regarding the events of January 6th. And, just like his first impeachment, the Senate later held a trial and acquitted him of the charge. All of this brings us to a stark historical reality, the number 2. Because of the events in 2019 and 2021, Donald Trump became the only president in American history to be impeached and acquitted twice by Congress. It's a profound marker of just how deeply polarized the political climate of the era really was.
But as we know, the story certainly did not end in 2021. In what was an extraordinary and honestly unexpected political comeback, Trump announced his candidacy for the presidency once again in November 2022. Despite the intense controversies of the preceding years, he successfully navigated the primary process and secured the Republican nomination for the 2024 election. So, what was his message this time around? Well, he built his 2024 campaign on a return to his foundational priorities. We're talking strict immigration enforcement and further tax reform. He also leaned heavily into economic nationalism. He proposed tariffs specifically designed to stimulate American manufacturing, alongside big promises to drastically reduce federal regulations and entirely restructure certain government agencies. And that message clearly resonated, leading to an incredible culmination. In 2024, Donald Trump defeated the Democratic nominee, Vice President Kamala Harris. But he didn't just win the presidency back. He actually achieved something he hadn't managed to do during his 2016 run, and that was winning a plurality of the national popular vote. When all was said and done, the final tally stood at 312. Securing those 312 electoral votes comfortably surpassed the 270 needed to win, officially cementing his return to the Oval Office as the 47th President of the United States. So he is now only the second president ever to serve non-consecutive terms. We've walked through his business origins, his first term, the impeachments, his electoral defeat, and his historic return to power. But it leaves us asking one really profound question. What will the ultimate historical legacy of serving non-consecutive terms actually be? How will history view a leader who completely rewrote the rules of American political survival? Only time, and the history books that are yet to be written, will truly tell. Keep questioning and keep learning.